Counter motion, I think.
Thank you. I move the counter motion. And Gurma got last can Corla. I welcome the opportunity this evening to discuss the important issue of the cost of living. And at the outset, I would like to make one important point. No party or person in this House has a monopoly on compassion. There has been a worldwide spike in inflation caused by the war in Ukraine, and all of us recognise the very real challenges that people and families are facing. People's utility bills have gone up and the cost of the weekly shop has increased. And it's not easy for people at the moment. And we know that. And it's why this government has taken unprecedented steps to support our citizens. To listen to the deputies opposite, you'd swear that we hadn't done a tap, and that we've sat on our hands for the last 2 years and done nothing to help. The reality is, since this government was formed, it has more than any government in the history of the state put in place billions of euro in measures to protect and support our people. We did it during the pandemic. 18 billion was paid out through the pandemic unemployment payment and the wage subsidy scheme. That was 18 billion to support and protect ordinary workers and families. But Sinn Féin dismissed that, just like you dismiss all of the other measures we have taken to help people with the cost of living. A 2.2 billion social protection budget package, the largest in the history of the state. A €12 increase in all weekly payments, the highest increase in payments since the mid-2000s. 1.3 billion in targeted lump sum payments before Christmas to support our most vulnerable. A €500 working family payment, a €500 grant to support our carers, a €500 grant for people with disabilities, a €200 for those living alone, a €400 payment for all those receiving fuel allowance, and double payments in the autumn and at Christmas for all pensioners, carers, lone parents and people with disabilities. Lump sum payments of that nature have never happened before. And contrary to what you say, the independent analysis from the ESRI clearly shows that the approach taken by the government means that low-income households are better off than if increases in core payments had simply matched inflation. Don't take my word for it, that's the independent analysis from the ESRI. This government moved at speed to issue those lump sum payments throughout November and December, and yet you stand here tonight as if that 1.3 billion package of targeted measures to support our most vulnerable had never happened. Nor do you want to acknowledge the universal measures we have taken to support working families. Sinn Féin has no time for ordinary people who get up every day and go out and do a day's work. And we know that. That's long been your party's policy. You want to tax the working man and woman into oblivion. This government takes a different approach. We want to support ordinary working people and their families. And that's why we had a double payment of child benefit. And it's why we brought in 3 universal energy credits so that families can get €600 off their energy bills. And it's why we have reduced income tax. And it's why we have reduced childcare costs by 25%. And it's why we reduced school transport costs and reduced the student contribution fees. This government stands by working families, and we will never apologise for supporting them. Sinn Féin wants to abandon them. And I have listened to you pontificate about what the government should be doing. Well, let's look at your own record. Sinn Féin are the largest party in Northern Ireland, and you have been in office there for decades. So, what have you achieved? 1 in 5 people in Northern Ireland live in poverty. 1 out of every 4 children live in poverty. And half of all households in Northern Ireland are facing fuel poverty. And that's the record of Sinn Féin in office. The basic state pension in Northern Ireland is £141. The contributory pension here is €265. And if you qualify for the fuel allowance and the living alone allowance, it could be up to €320 per week. That's more than double what pensioners in Northern Ireland receive. So as far as the two faces of Sinn Féin are concerned, €320 isn't good enough for the pensioner in Castleblaney, but £140 is more than enough for the man or woman from Crossmaglen. Sinn Féin are trying to ride two horses. You come in here tonight and you shout that our social welfare rates are inadequate, but it's a very different story when you're campaigning in the north. There you're going around telling everybody how much better off they'll be in a united Ireland. Well, they would be better off now when it comes to their pension and social welfare, but that would soon change if you got into government. You've talked about what this government didn't do in the budget, so I'm going to have to look at your budget submissions. Sinn Féin didn't propose any expansion of the fuel allowance for older people. You let old people who have worked all their lives go cold. This government has expanded the fuel allowance in a major way for people over 70. And then you talk about the work and family payment, when your own budget proposals would have seen thousands of families have their working family payments cut. The reason for this is you didn't increase the income thresholds to take account of the rise in the minimum wage. It's the same old story with Sinn Féin. Your sums don't add up. You always forget to carry the one. You talked in your motion about a discretionary fund, and this is the third time you've talked about this. The first time you suggested it, you wanted a €5 million fund. Then you proposed a €15 million fund. And now you're back again, but this time you haven't even bothered to put a figure on it. Just set up a discretionary fund. No costings, no criteria, nothing. Now, if a school child handed that in, you'd tell them to go back and do their homework. And just for your information, the government has paid out €58 million in additional needs payments targeted at people in financial difficulties. And Sinn Féin always seem to forget one simple fact of life, that everything has to be paid for. The reason this government was able to support people during the pandemic, the reason we've been able to support people over the last year with the cost of living, and the reason we'll be able to provide further supports over the coming weeks is due to sound economic management. Unemployment is at a record low, and Ireland has the fastest growing economy in Europe. And listening to Sinn Féin speakers tonight, you seem to think that having a strong economy is a bad thing, that it's something to be ashamed of. You do realise we need a strong economy to pay for all these supports, and Sinn Féin can't even grasp that basic economic reality. And every step of the way on every policy you've opposed us. And none of these supports would be possible under Sinn Féin, because your policies are trash and would crash the economy. Sinn Féin are very good at telling everybody how to spend money, but you're not so good at telling us where to find it or how to pay the bills. And of course, Sinn Féin don't seem to believe in paying some of their bills. You just have to look at the paper today. So this motion tonight is a political stunt. The government is already working on a further package of measures to help with the cost of living, and as has been the case for the last 2 years and a half, we will not be found wanting when it comes to supporting the people.